In a world with artificial intelligence, how do we transform education? Thanks for tuning in. I'm Daniel Lopez, and this is the AI Education Conversation, where we explore the opportunities, risks, and impacts of AI across education. If you'd like to join the conversation, check out the AIeducationconversation.com. Let's jump in. Hey everyone, hope the week is treating you well. I feel like I've started many episodes over the past couple weeks talking about how excited I've been for the developments that have been continuing to take place across AI. And the last week continued this streak in a major way. OpenAI just announced their latest AI tool, their text to video tool called Sora. I was so excited about some of the videos they dropped, which showed Sora's capabilities. And we're definitely going to be doing a deep dive into Sora soon. But I think today's episode comes at such a great time, given the natural inclination might be to think that we have finally hit our get on the train or be left at the station moment here in AI and education. That's not the case. And my conversation today comes with our first returning guest to the AI education conversation, a true AI education unicorn in the field, given her really deep experiences as a systems level education leader, most recently as chief academic officer with San Benito Consolidated Independent School District in Texas, while also having very deep academic and research experiences in AI for many years, well beyond and before ChatGPT. I'm thrilled to welcome Dr. Nneka McGee back to the AI education conversation. There are only a few leaders in the field right now, I think, with the depth of expertise around both AI and education that she has. So, we took a real doctoral level deep dive into the landscape in today's conversation. That being said, honestly, this conversation with Nneka was probably one of my favorite conversations on this AI learning journey so far. I think maybe it's because we are talking for the second time, or maybe it's because we've both grown tremendously in our knowledge around AI and education over the past year. That being said, if you wanted a doctoral level class on AI and education over an hour, this episode is definitely for you. We deep dive into privacy, AI teacher development, AI implementation levers, visions for AI in education, and so much more. If you're interested in my other takeaways, check out the companion show notes in the episode description or sign up for the conversation at theAIeducationconversation.com. I share all show notes with my community 12 hours before sharing with my social media networks. If you have any other thoughts on today's episode, I'd love to hear them. As a special plug, I also hope that you join Dr. McGee at her special Day 29 Day of AI Learning. I'm going to post a link for registration in the chat. It's going to happen on February 29th. It's going to be a really special day. I'm definitely looking forward to checking out some of the sessions there as well. As always, you can reach out to me and message me on LinkedIn if you have any thoughts, or feel free to join the conversation at theaieducation.com. Humans at the heart of education. Enjoy the conversation. What's up, everyone? I'm thrilled to announce that I will be presenting at SequoiaCon 2024. If your team, school, or district, or institution for that matter, is ready to take the leap in exploring AI implementation, my session will support with strategies for implementation and navigating change management. The team at Evergreen is also giving any of my followers $50 off the conference registration if you use my code AICombo. You can register at the link in the show notes. Early bird registration ends on Thursday, February 1st. I hope to see you all at my session. Humans at the heart of education. All right, we're live. Dr. Nneka McGee, I am so excited to have you back. You were the first, second time returning guest to the AI education conversation. Welcome back.
Awesome. I'm getting my t-shirt and my coffee mug. I appreciate that.
I, I know you're gonna get the title belt at the end of this episode, huh? Getting the belt for a while.
Let's go.
Well, I mean, let's just start just by catching up a little. I mean, you and I connected in June of last year. I feel like so much has happened in the 8 months since our conversation. So I'd love to just hear from you a little bit. Give us an update, like what have you been up to? What have you learned? What are you noticing? Just any updates to share with us since we last talked.
So I think the biggest thing that happened is I was finally able to complete and defend my dissertation, which was
Woo.
surrounding AI and in education, in particular, the implementation or preparation of implementation by teachers in K-12 learning environments in the United States. And so it was definitely a labor of love and hate at times. So, that was awesome. What's been exciting too is the number of opportunities I've had to speak about AI and implementation. Even so far as recently, I was at an event for the school leaders of color for Teach for America and on a panel there that was very exciting, and also for the Texas Computer Education Association. And to be in those environments, to be able to speak about the safe and responsible implementation of AI and also the critical issues surrounding AI has been great. And finally, with the school district that I've served, being able to implement, the last time we talked, we were very early stage and we had a Valley Artificial Intelligence Summit. We had the opportunity to bring together a cohort of teachers and to allow them the opportunity to have a voice in the types of products and AI tools that we introduced into the district. It was called the Greyhound Astra Project. And so that was exciting
Mm.
as well. So those are some of the things I've been up to since the last time we spoke.
Oh, interesting. And I think that connection to the teacher will be so interesting for some of the questions later around your thesis, because I see like even a direct parallel there because with some of the things you're noticing. So I mean, this that all sounds exciting and interesting, and I'm interested to like go further into that. I mean, I know that when we talked first, so much of our conversation was centered around some of the more mainstream debates in AI. And I
Mhm.
mean, you and I were even just talking about this before we hit record here around like so much of the conversation in education spheres has been around cheating or, plagiarism and academic integrity, those types of things. But over the last 6 to 8 months, are you seeing any type of evolution in thinking in some of the spaces you and are you seeing folks asking different questions or thinking about AI in different ways, or just any headlines you could offer about different learnings you've had in the last 6 months around AI in particular as tools have continued to evolve?
So I think one of the biggest issues that has arisen with tools is safety and security, in particular with the data of our students, and then the privacy implementations. I think when AI first came out, and the conversations were centered on cheating, plagiarism, is AI going to end the teaching profession as we know it? There was less of a focus on things like terms of service, like memorandums of
Mm,
understanding, like data sharing agreements. And so there was this rush to, oh, we're banning because of plagiarism, as opposed we're taking a measured approach because we need to understand, are the agreements that we've entered into or that we're looking to enter into, do they comply with things like COPPA, which addresses children 13 years of age or under? Are we addressing things like FERPA and making sure that our students' data is protected? And so now many of the questions that I even receive are, what do you think about this data sharing agreement? And then one eye opening piece for people is, who are these third parties? Because all you see in these agreements are third parties. And I was just speaking at an event and I said, if you ever want to think about who a third party is and how integrated these third parties are in our systems, I said, when you go to some sites that have the transparency with their cookies, I went on one recently and there were 702 companies that had were tracking the cookies on
oh my
on
goodness.
my computer. And so we have to, and really we don't want to scare people, right? These things are in place, but people need to be informed. And that there's a different layers there, because I think that's where people start to get scared, whereas opposed to in the past, the fear was on the cheating and plagiarism. Now there's more that fear, like, is our privacy being protected? And I think the same thing kind of applies with information, with systems in place, with stronger agreements. We don't want to create barriers. We want to create protection. That's just one aspect of what I'm seeing right now.
Yeah, the privacy and just the ethical use case piece that you're noticing is something I've been noticing a lot in my conversations on air and off air as well. I think a lot of folks are starting to recognize that a lot of these mainstream tools, their acceptable use agreements tend to be for, individuals that are 13 years or older. So there are some really clear use cases for how you can implement some of the bigger tools in more high school context. But I think obviously it gets trickier when you think about the lower grades with those acceptable use agreements. And then I think, to your point, you add on the complexity of the fact that for some of the biggest companies here, they all have these APIs, and there's so many products now. There's a proliferation of products being built using those AI tools and, rebranded as something else, and then they are successfully being implemented in some school contexts and one-off use cases. And so I'd love to like maybe ask you about that for just a second here. When knowing that there are certain AI products right now that may be powered by ChatGPT or powered by some other model, and they are marketing themselves as tools to be used in the classroom that are student facing, and in some cases for users under 13 years old. How are they able to do that legally, knowing that these acceptable use terms are over 13? How are they able to say we're an AI product to, be a tutoring app, as an example, for elementary school students and helping them in math?
Yes. So in many districts, what happens is at the beginning of the school year, and sometimes at the middle, but generally at the beginning of the school year, you're getting that big packet or on the computer, you're had this long, drawn out 22, 30 pages of documents to sign. As a part of that are permissions to utilize ed tech tools with students, and they may be called, it's similar to acceptable, use agreements or digital access agreements. They have different terms, but they all have the same thing. We as the district will be providing, certain types of digital tools for your students to use, and we have permission to, from our parent or legal guardian to utilize these tools, and the parent signs it, right, or the guardian signs it. At that point, the district is in the position to say that we are acting in the place of the parent for these tools, even if those children are under the age of 13. And the term for it is called in loco parentis. And so that's how they're able generally to do that legally, because the parent has signed an agreement saying that we're able to utilize these tools. Some of the things that the districts are grappling with is because, in particular, some of the LLMs, as you said, and the companies that are utilizing LLMs as a part of entering in data, it's also being used to train the system. So now, do the agreements that parents and legal guardians are signing, do those agreements actually meet the moment? And sometimes some of them are strong enough that they do meet the moment. Some need tweaking. And those are some of the issues that districts are grappling with now as they continue to make decisions regarding AI implementation.
Yeah, I'm definitely not a lawyer, but what a fascinating conversation that must be from that standpoint, as like we're grappling with this technology, just as you're describing. Because I in some of the previous roles I've had, where I do have some context on this particular conversation, is we would work with to solidify like data sharing agreements with
Hmm.
vendors, and to ensure that that those were vetted, those were thoughtful, and those were interrogated. But usually in those data sharing agreements, it was pretty static and explicit what you're collecting, right? Like we may say, oh, we're taking students GPAs, we're taking their racial ethnicity, or we're taking like first for a free reduced price lunch indicators, or those types of pieces, contact information. But then now, with the fact that you can train on these, or the fact that the conversation is evolving, if some of the products that are being put in front of the students aren't static things, oh, this is just trained for math. If it is like a multimodal, multi kind of faceted LLM, such as like a chat GPT, students could continually be giving information that fall out of these static agreements, where it was like,
Hmm.
no, we just agreed to give you things across these like 5 indicators, and now students are like providing information across many more. So I can just imagine how complex of a conversation that is. Like I don't even know how you begin to solve that.
And I think in many ways that's where the gap exists, and in some ways is taken advantage of in a sense, because again, if I'm just signing a wholesale agreement, well, technically, yeah, you've given me permission. That's been relied on for decades, right? So it's definitely an interesting conversation to have, but that's why it's good to revisit those agreements as individuals are working through this. And hopefully in some districts, like in Texas, we have the Texas Association of School Boards, who provide legal services, and they provide guidance on policy and data sharing agreements and things of that nature. Hopefully, other states, and I would imagine other states, have similar entities to provide that support to school districts. And I know that many entities such as TASB are starting to look at these agreements and how to incorporate the appropriate language that helps protect the district, help protect students first and foremost, and helps guide districts on the language to use that has the specificity, as you mentioned, that are similar to data sharing agreements that have been in place before.
Yeah, and I also think, I mean, in what's been very interesting about the past 6 months, and just even in as we're catching up here, is we are seeing pressure put on these large tech companies from other entities to be able to try to create more privacy guardrails. Like, I know, with all of the back and forth with the EU as an example, and
Mhm.
ChatGPT, that ultimately led to them creating options for you to choose whether or not you could be trained, your data can be trained on some of the
Yeah.
prompting that you were doing. And then obviously on their enterprise and their team profiles that you pay for, it also includes options to have, that walled garden approach, where you're not for giving your data to be trained on the model, and it's kind of living in the silo that you have. So overall, hopefully some of those continued dialogues create just an influencing flow there as well, where the tools also continue to build guardrails, where it makes it maybe a little bit easier to create language around. I want to also transition this just a little bit. You mentioned your thesis.
Yes.
Let's talk about it.
Okay.
I have had the opportunity to read it. I know that you were so gracious in sharing that with your LinkedIn community, and I enjoyed being able to dig in and just seeing your perspective on developing this, this labor of love and sometimes hate, as you called it. And I mean, I had a couple of questions, but then I also wanted to just hold space for you to just share what stood out for you, knowing you went into such a deep wormhole of exploring AI in education. So let's maybe just start with the high level piece. So can you give us the high level overview of, your research question? What was your thesis about?
So, oh, definitely. So, just to start, what the problem that we saw was the lack of knowledge with teachers who were implementing or preparing to implement artificial intelligence in K-12 learning environments. And my focus was particularly in the United States. And there was the piece in terms of the lack of knowledge about AI and AI tools, and then also the professional development opportunities available to teachers who were planning to implement artificial intelligence. And so that's where the dive started, right? What does this look like? Because even though there was a gap, there were teachers who were already implementing or planning to implement. So, what were their lived experiences with artificial intelligence, with professional development opportunities? And from those lived experiences, the hope is that others in districts, whether it be district personnel, district leaders, ed tech companies, can learn from those experiences so that, again, we can have safe, responsible AI implementation that isn't limited. Right, that doesn't become a situation where you have barriers in place that will lead to AI haves and have nots. So that was the genesis of the research. In terms of the most surprising finding for me was the reliance on the teacher down the hall, and how much our colleagues, we respect that teacher who's, who knows, okay, this, that we all know the teacher who knows everything, who's like into the tech, who's really doing it. And the fact that in the absence of district and regional professional development opportunities and the financial and geographic barriers that existed, that didn't allow people to go to some of the bigger conferences or things of that nature. They were like, hey, the teacher down the hall is going to help me. My colleague can help me get a better understanding of AI in the absence of that. And so that was an interesting, but also refreshing that we are, as educators, relying on each other and building upon each other for knowledge. On another piece of that, I did, even though it's what's available, the social media aspects of it and reaching out to social media as an outlet for knowledge, I think had its positives and and its negatives. And even though, because I was dealing with lived experiences, it was not my, obviously we can't add our biases, add our judgment into the work. I just think as an extension to that, I do feel like with the social media, you get the good and the bad. And so there's a lot of good because you're learning, you're getting information about AI. But I also think that there were a lot of misconceptions that got hardened and hardwired into the educational system that is going to take a while to shake. For for example, the fear aspect of it, the cheating aspect of it, the plagiarism aspect, all those negatives that we started to hear about and were kind of built in because many of the initial sessions you would hear how to stop your kids from cheating, right? These were the sessions that were coming out. So it became hardwired
Mm-hmm.
into our system, and that was available as opposed to the other approach, an approach, I started taking of, hey, you know what? AI has been here. Let's talk about how you've already been using AI in the classroom. Now let's talk about the different ways beyond generative AI of how you can use AI in the classroom. And now how you can use it as a teacher and what safe available student facing tools you can use at this time. I think if we had started that approach, we would be in a different place now because there's still just such that gap that we're right now in 2024 still having multitudes of teachers and educators across the system, whether it be, as you stated, counselors or even administrators who are still like, this AI thing, maybe not for me. I think it's kind of surprising.
Yeah, I think there's so much to unpack there, but I will say that my initial reaction is you're absolutely right that the finding of connecting with the teacher down the hall to expand your the capacity is surprising, but in some ways it's also not, right? Because it's like relationships matter,
Yeah.
right? That's like what education is about. That's what we constantly ground in, and it's very, I think, helpful to see like that aligns even in just in our own professional development. I think that's what I immediately thought when you said that. I think the other piece that you're unearthing for me that feels very surprising is I remember that last year so much of the data that I was seeing on these like one-off surveys that organizations were posting around teacher perspectives was actually showing that teachers had a pretty neutral or slightly positive perspective on AI, but didn't obviously, as I think you're alluding to here, have the teacher training or the technical skills to like actually know what that entailed. But their perception of it was like leaning towards the positive. But with what you're saying, I'm actually curious to know, like today in February, given all of the things that happened, if that has evolved. Like if as you're saying, some of these conversations around cheating, academic integrity, some of these pieces have actually now gotten us to a point where there are stronger perspectives on AI and those opinions maybe not being good, especially if folks haven't had the opportunity to personally play around with some of these tools. So that's something I'm thinking about, I think, based on what you just said there.
So again, I still think there are a large number of teachers of, like you said, they may have heard about it on the periphery. I still think that there is a strong correlation or connection between chat gpt in particular and generative AI, generally, that people have a connection with when they think about this is AI. So when you're having a conversation about, an adaptive learning system or a news report that came out yesterday in the Dallas Morning News where it's like, hey, yeah, AI is going to be scoring essays for STAR. And people were like, whoa. And I'm like, yeah, but that's been going on for a long time. That shouldn't have been like, people shouldn't have been shocked because AI
I
has
did not
been
know that,
grading
and I worked in
papers.
Texas.
Huh?
I did not know. Well, so did AI? Has AI historically graded papers for STAR, or you're saying in
No, in
general it's
general, it's
graded?
something that has been
Oh,
going
oh,
on.
okay.
Some of these companies have actually been using it, and as opposed to you're always going to have a human in the loop. So I don't know how far I should get because I don't want to talk about. Because if I talk about a system that is used, somebody be like, that's our company. You know what I mean? So she knows
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
what's
yeah.
going on. But all I can tell you is that AI has been in testing, adaptive testing
Hmm.
systems for some time. So, what could that look like? For example, a system that it's used in testing, you start off on a certain level, you're getting those questions right. The AI is like, okay, we need to take this person, this student or test taker to another level. Now maybe you're starting to get some wrong. It takes you back and forth. It takes you back and forth to give
Mm,
an idea of where you are in terms of your ability or your achievement. That is a AI system that does that, and that has been in place for some time, and multiple people use it. So that's why I feel like, particularly now that we're over a year into this AI rush, the fact that the reaction was so robust was like, well, now we understand the gap, because so many people are associating it with all these things we can create with generative AI, instead of here's how AI is actually used in education, in the underlay, in the systems that you may not ever see, but it's there. We have to start making sure that we are intentional about bringing those things to the forefront so there aren't those surprises, because it isn't new. So again, that's what I saw in my research, right? That there's just these gaps,
mm.
and now there are these hardwired misconceptions that generative AI is the only thing in education, and it's actually a minimal part.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's so interesting. I think you're right that as many of us are continuing to get to expand our own knowledge around how some of these technical components work, when we hear about some of these use cases that are out there, which historically may have already existed, as we now more contextualize and understand what it actually means, we may have some stronger reactions about, like, oh, well, that's number one, I did not know that's what you were doing. And number two, whoa, like, I'm not okay with that. Or maybe I have some strong feelings related to this in a way that I didn't comprehend before because I didn't have maybe the technical foundation to like really process what was actually taking place. And I wonder if there's a lot of folks who be having a similar experience at this given time as we all do our research on AI, or for the many of us that are doing it.
Well, let me tell you what the reaction was. The report came out, and on that same day, a company came out and said, hey, guess what? We already have a system that'll allow you to test out how your students are doing with these certain type of questions with our AI system, right?
Mm,
And we're going to build
mhm.
this. So there's a reaction. Whereas before, you might have had to wait a little bit, right? And who knows if this, what the, efficiency is, how effective it is. But the fact that almost in real time, someone is back there prompt engineering, like we're going to give this a go
Yeah.
and have this
Yeah.
ready.
Yeah.
That's a different experience for an ed tech company where you're not waiting and okay, a couple months or even years of R&D. We're like, let's go. And so that was so interesting to me, because there was a reaction of, okay, now this AI is grading. Okay, now what are the tools? Let me look for the tools. We have to figure out how we can ensure that what our students write are meeting the moment with the AI system that's grading it. I think it's just so interesting to me, that reaction.
Yeah. And I know too, just like on some broader podcasts that I've listened to with some of the, the largest think leaders in the technology space, folks like Sam Altman, Bill Gates, they've continued to say that they think one of the largest transformations or impacts of AI is going to be around the coders, right? Like you have coders who are using these tools to do projects that would have taken months, if not years, and now they can do that significantly faster because they have the coding background. They're able to use it to generate, and it just the proliferation of being able to create code is so different. So I kind of hear that playing around in a similar way here, and potentially in other places that we're not even talking about. This also feels like a really good time to circle back to something that we were talking about in your thesis related to the levels of stages of concern.
Hmm.
And you had this figure that you introduced in your paper, and I'm going to make sure that I link your paper in the show notes so if folks are interested in digging in, they can. It's on page 29 for anybody that's listening. And on page 29, you provided this very interesting just table that includes seven, I guess you could say, levels of concern. The scale goes from 0 to 6, 0 being unconcerned, meaning an individual who is, I guess, experiencing technology or technological innovation is indicating little concern or no involvement with the innovation. And then 6 being the individual is focused on exploring ways to reap more universal benefits from the innovation, including the possibility of making major changes to it. So essentially, the higher you get to 6, the more receptive, or the more they're really not just contextualizing the innovation, but like actually taking it and using it to create an impact, is my understanding of this. But would just love to hear your take on this. How would you describe these stages of concern? And just as a maybe a quick little fun activity here, as you think about the landscape maybe here in the United States in public education, like where would you say we currently are 15 months into our AI learning journey on the stages of concern? How would you rate us?
Uh-oh.
And you could break that down however you would like.
Okay, definitely. So first of all, yes. So the stages of concern, it does come from a particular model, which is called the concerns-based adoption model, CBAM. And I definitely want to give credit. The CBAM was developed by Hall and Horde. It actually stems from Texas, and so that's exciting. But with that comes a stages of concern questionnaire. And why I selected the CBAM and the stages of concern, even though traditionally it is a quantitative instrument, I love the fact that individuals in studies that I researched had taken components of it for qualitative measures, which is what I, use in my research. And so with that, yes, you're right. You have the unconcerned. And I think that there are very few individuals in the educational ecosystem that have no idea or have never heard artificial intelligence. So I definitely think we're beyond that stage. I do think collectively we're at the informational stage. And the reason I say that is even until last week, I was doing presentations and there are still people that are so hungry, like they know about AI, but it's like, how do I apply it? How does it work for me? Like I've heard it saves time, but really I heard it's about that cheating stuff. And so they're interested in it. They're not so much, worried again, a large enough swath, but they are interested in what it could do. There's another portion, I believe, that are in that personal stage because they're uncertain, right? So you do have teachers out there, administrators out there, other individuals in the educational ecosystem who are like, okay, wait a minute. AI is here. What is it going to do for me? How is it going to impact my school, my students, my teachers? And so there's another swath there. Now, for the teachers in my study who had implemented artificial intelligence, generally teachers and subjects where they were more specific to computer science and things of that nature, they were definitely on those other levels when it comes to that impact, right? They were collaborating with students or collaborating with each other or beginning to think about those wider issues of how does this benefit, particularly even with the equity lenses in the career lenses. One individual who was a part of the study was thinking about, hey, I'm trying to help my kids be able to have careers, right? So they're refocusing upon this general coding aspect of it, the applicability with lessons, and thinking about how are these kids going to actually work in society and be successful with using AI on a daily or on a consistent basis. So those, in terms of those different levels and the applicability levels, I would say the majority of us collectively are in the informational or personal stage, which are those self stages. And then those who have been implementing it for some time are now thinking about the impact. And so they may be on that upper with the collaboration and refocusing stages.
Got it. So recognizing that many of us across the education landscape may still be trying to really understand what the technology is, or personalize it from. So being in that like one or two rating, as you're alluding to, is it? I mean, is it just about training and talking to the teacher down the hall? Is that what is going to get us up this spectrum here, or are there other things that you have found either in your thesis or in your personal experiences leading, being a large school district leader, that you think actually is successful in helping education stakeholders move their way up the spectrum here to get
Right.
towards
So
impact?
the other thing that we have to recognize, and even from we're both being educators, so I'll focus it as this: when we're thinking about our PD and what to do, were we typically going to spend our time in professional development sessions that were not initiated or championed by the district? No. Right? Because why would we invest time in things that weren't useful given where our plates are full? So the other part of the research that I found is okay, the teacher down the hall. Remember, I told you it was the teacher down the hall because there was a gap because they were looking for okay, where's our in service? There's no artificial intelligence in our in service. There's no artificial intelligence in our professional learning day, right? Our regional service center doesn't have anything to do with artificial intelligence. So it's the teacher down the hall. So teachers, in the absence of that, they're saying, hey, where's the district with this artificial intelligence thing? If the district is not providing it, they're going to be less likely unless there's someone who's we all had those teachers, the ones that are the innovators, the early adopters, give me everything. They have badges up and down. Their whole walls are decorated with, champions and
All the
all the
badges,
badges. So yes, you're always
all
going to
the
have those teachers.
certifications.
But your average teacher without having that district initiative, that district push, this was another thing that I found interesting and why I selected CBAM in the stages of concern because it specifically addresses the district implementation or investment in programs and the teacher reaction to it, right? So that's where I think, yes, it does have to be conversations, but if teachers are not sensing that the district is making that investment and the district is not having those offerings wide scale, it's not going to be implemented to the way we think it is. It'll die on the vine and be a dusty
Yeah.
binder. It just will. I mean, we have to face the fact.
Oh,
I love those dusty binders,
I was gonna say we with the first time we referenced the Dusty Binder, I was waiting for
but
it.
it will
We
happen
Here it came.
in real time. By next year,
Yeah.
we'll be talking about something else. If it's not, implemented in that way, or the district investment is not there.
Yeah, I mean that resonates so much. I think that actually lends itself really well to the next question I wanna ask you in just a second here. But I do think to your point, what's what I heard from what you said, and I think that there's two like really interesting takeaways there, which is like, and especially for those folks who haven't worked in a school district before but have worked in an organization, like the behavior model is exactly the same, right? Which is like the people who work in your organization, school district or not, they're going to be highly motivated by the goals and the priorities that the organization sets.
Mhm.
So if your goals, your priorities don't reflect something you think that they should be doing and you're asking people to do and you're like, "Hey, we should do this because it's important," but it's not reflected there, they are likely not going to prioritize that compared to other things that they're actually being asked to prioritize as reflected in their evaluation, maybe the way that their classroom performs, any of those things. And so to your point, having a one-off training could be helpful. Some teachers may take advantage of it. It's probably going to be the teachers who are already interested in this to begin with or see the value of this. It's not going to be, teachers who are maybe hyper motivated by the things that they're being asked to do and assessed by their performance. So there does have to be this more foundational priority of trying to implement it in some way into the ethos of your policies or in the goals that you set or in some of the like strategic planning that you're doing as you think about your 5-year strategic plan, right? It has to be more foundational for folks to move. I see this similarly working in states, to give like a really concrete example for something that is not AI, but it has worked the same way. I think the FAFSA
Mhm.
application, as an example, is I think a really good example of like how this took place. Where it's like I've been to certain states where having students submit and complete the FAFSA, and just for context, the FAFSA is the application that your high school students will submit alongside their college application to get government money to be able to afford their college experience. Now in Texas, FAFSA is a very
Yep.
big deal, and folks are really completing. They prioritize. They say they do it. Why? Because schools are being evaluated. It's a part of their
Yep.
scorecard, right? It's a part of their report card. In other states I've been to, it's not. So they don't have that same level of urgency or that same level of just trying to get that done as they do other things, because again they're not being evaluated in the same way around it. So I think AI could play a similar role depending on how you think about what that looks like or how you're determining it potentially fits into that. The second thing I'm hearing and noticing from what you're saying is that in absence of the teachers really being able to what they have to do the job, and I think everybody's experienced this before, right? You have the management team or the leadership team that'll set goals, but then the practitioners who are doing the work sometimes have to fill in the gaps and they have to figure out how they're going to actually achieve ABC because they're not being given like the resources or the guidance or the clarity to do it. They're being asked to do this, but they don't. And it sounds like
that's also maybe partially the reason there's this exchange between teachers. Teachers are maybe recognizing that AI is important, that they should be talking or thinking about it, and as a result, they're talking to those teachers down the hall because they may have resources or supports to be able to talk to them in a way about it that at a more macro level their school district may or may not be providing. And so that also stood out to me. But I would say related to that, the question I have for you is, I know that you have mentioned the lack of teacher training as something that can come up and could be a critical lever potentially for expanding an AI capacity, but is also something that is currently lacking, I would say, across most school districts. But I would say, just from more of a leader standpoint, one thing that I have found is that there's like 1,000 different things that schools need to be talking about in those teacher training days, and you got like what, 15 a year. So how do you ultimately define what gets prioritized in that time, given all of the things that school districts are being asked to hold? And then, like, how do you navigate just the change management aspect of that, like being able to express to folks why this is important and why we're choosing to use our very scarce training time on something like artificial intelligence?
So, thank you. And so, one thing that you said that I want to capture because it is so important to strong functioning districts, and it is starting with the strategic plan, the vision, the mission, the values that generally a board of trustees sets, and a superintendent or CEO or direct, the top head of the district is tasked with carrying out. And so that's where the priorities lie. In many districts as well, we're driven by district improvement plans that we're required to fill out, if you're particularly for federal funding, and campuses through their campus improvement plans. And so that's where it starts. And I think that sometimes is what's missing when you're dealing with ed tech companies and others that don't see that flow, and why so many things die on the vine, because we're not looking at those steps as part of the process. It's like, let's dive in, let's not take this work, let's not be, the critical work that goes into those plans, as site-based decision making committees, and going through and having surveys. So that goes to the next part of what you stated. How do we prioritize? Well, we prioritize from those documents, and from those documents where we're looking at, needs and root causes and what's going on with our district to prioritize. And so with that, if one of those priorities is professional development, right? And the development for our tools, then what is the AI for? Is it a tool for teachers, or is it something that we have to ensure our students are learning in order to be successful in society? So then we got to go to another layer, which, what does our state boards of education say about AI? I think as of today, if I recall, there's 6 or 7 states that have really dived in and really set the tone about what AI should look like across the spectrum in their systems. And so there's where the priorities lie. So again,
Hmm.
when it comes to professional development and ensuring our teachers get what they need, it goes to another survey and another kind of task of information. What do you need to know? So there's a part of priorities you can't get away from in terms of teacher training, particularly when it comes to in-service. I don't know if everybody watches the video. I mean, I'm on my 17th year of the bloodborne pathogens. so, so
Yep. All those
right,
training
but you know
videos.
what
I
wasn't there
gotcha.
when I first started teaching? The cybersecurity video that we now have to watch. You know
Oh,
what I mean?
interesting. Or the copyright ones,
Right,
huh?
right.
Those ones
So
that dis- districts got sued so much they
right,
added
but
them.
still, so again, that, like, will we look to the future, and now because we have the cybersecurity one, will we have the artificial intelligence video that we're needing to watch? Will it come from that
Hmm.
level? If it's a decision about that innovative side, right? Here's an initiative we're bringing in. That's important, right? We do address that in service, but I want to say the best approach, if you're going to do that, and again, it comes to teacher surveys. That's why I feel like the teacher voice has to be important. That's why I liked CBAM as a part of the study. How concerned, how we're going to do it, because what else has happened in dealing with ed tech companies and dealing with ed tech initiatives is that we invest in products, we do our professional development, then we get the uses reports, and no one's using it. And so we made this investment And now we're like, what happened? Well, that shouldn't happen anymore. If you have a cycle of feedback, of evaluation, of review to look at the changes that we're trying to make, like you talked about, change management. So with that, if I and there's a couple of even districts who've done this. If you're thinking a one-off or even a 1-year implementation cycle with AI, I don't think that's enough. I think you're looking at a 3
Hmm.
to 5-year concerted effort just to get to where you need to be with AI, where it's systematized across the system. And that's hard when we don't have, because in many of these states, where it's occurring, the states have already had guidance at the state level. And so districts are really in a bind of how do we address this? How do we make it an initiative without that guidance? And so right now, the approach has been to look at some of the more teacher facing tools that are provided at work as opposed to the student facing tools. They're looking at things such as our, computer science programs and pathways and incorporating it and building it into lessons there. And those are some approaches that they're using. But in terms of overall implementation and interest, I would say for any district is to start planning and looking for a 3 to 5 year implementation cycle and what that looks like, because that's going to yield, I think, the most optimal chances of a successful platform and implementation.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, and I think we both recognize too that that can be very difficult to do when you think about the day-to-day realities of
Hmm.
school districts, such as an example, folks may the ones who may start this plan may end up transitioning to new roles or whatever, and then that is not continuing with the new set of stakeholders. Departments or things may shift as well. You may have a diversity in funding, new funding or funding being taken away, and so all of those things I think can play into the actual practice. But I think to your point, if you are starting small, maybe really focusing on just education, you're focusing on policies, you're really trying to ground it in the foundation of the actual documents and the levers that are going to really make a difference in your district, such as those campus, those district improvement plans, those strategic plans, then scaling it to teachers. And then over time, trying to think about like really ethical student use cases. That probably feels like a plan over multiple years versus something you try to squeeze all into a 12-month school year or anything like that.
It's
In
okay to
that way,
breathe. That's what I tell people. It
yeah.
really is okay. AI is not going anywhere. I think we can all agree that it's an essential part of our future, that
Hmm.
it's essential for people to have an understanding of what it means and how it applies not only to education and to learning environments, but to our wider society, how we're going to prepare students to live in, the fourth industrial age that's driven by AI and automation. All of that's well and good, but we cannot, sales pressure ourselves into a situation where we look back and say, how did we get this wrong? To me,
Hmm.
there's no reason for that. This is the perfect time to get it right. And we have so much leverage. Again, it's okay to say no to a company. It's okay to step back because, like you said, there are a lot of companies right now touting products that are basically overlays of Chat GPT. Is that what you want in your
Hmm.
district?
Hmm.
I don't know, right? I can't say yes or no because I'm a fan. I use Chat GPT all the time. It is still limited in our district though, for the reasons, right? Our kids 13 years or younger, they can't use it at all. It's just terms of service. It's just where we are. But then if there's a system that comes in, and this is where the transparent, we have to demand. I don't see any reason why company A comes in. Here's my beautiful new product. Okay, what large language models are you using? Are
Hmm.
you using Chat
Hmm.
GPT? Because that's going to limit what students are able to use that. That's okay for us to do that because we want to get it right. We don't
Yeah.
want to go through, if any district has gone through a data breach, not blaming any, but if you've gone through data breaches, you've gone through having to send out, or your third parties having to send out letters to families. Here's my fear is that if we don't get it right, if we don't inform the community or have that, relationship with the community, that will end up having some of these, bad cases, right? Deep fake cases. You're already seeing it. And then AI becomes the boogeyman. And then it becomes something where people are trying to ban it.
Yeah.
it can happen, and that would be unfortunate. We can't ban it. We can't. I said the other day, somebody was talking about, oh, y'all ban chat because I said, we banned ChatGPT in the district initially, and they were like, "Oh, you ban artificial intelligence?" I said, "Can't ban artificial intelligence. No way to do it. We banned ChatGPT, right?
Yeah.
Initially." And so that's where we
Hmm.
don't want people to get to the point where they're like, "AI is the boogeyman. Let's ban it. Let's make it illegal," because it's impossible to do so. So we have a lot of work to do on our end, but we have to do it right, and we can. So it's okay to breathe and take a measured approach.
Oh, that just felt so cathartic for me to just hear you say that, from both in terms of the we have space to do it, but then also just the cautionary tale there too, because I think I'm worried for exactly the same reason. I what I don't want to happen for our schools and for my friends who work in schools is for artificial intelligence to be ed techified, and the same experience that folks have had with like non AI ed technology products and those bad use cases to happen to artificial intelligence, right? Where your assumption of artificial intelligence is this one product, and it comes into your school uses it for half a year, only a couple people use it, you have a horrible experience and it makes your job harder, and then that like
Mhm.
clouds your entire perception of what artificial intelligence is. I think so many schools, teachers have felt that before with non-AI products. And to your point, artificial intelligence isn't a product. It's not ChatGPT. AI is electricity, right? And it's going to be a foundation for so many other products, use cases, capabilities that we're not even thinking about now. And while it's also very exciting, to your point, let's breathe and let's think about it. And so that actually is a perfect segue to my next question, which is, I think, as we take this time and reflect, from my perspective, the way that we encourage schools to not fall into this wormhole of trying to sign up for 10 different products doing 10 different things, I think it starts with your vision, right? It starts with your vision of really wanting to know what aspirationally in our most optimal world, like what do we want the education for our young people to be, and then asking yourself, like, how does AI play a role in that? And so I'm curious, like, from your perspective, like, with everything you know about artificial intelligence, and also you, I mean, you've dedicated your career to education, like, what is your vision for the educational experience for our young people? What do you want to see, and what role do you think AI could play in that?
So the first thing is I want to step back just for a little bit. And you talked about ed tech and one of the biggest issues that I'm seeing right now, because we were all having fun with that ESSER money in terms of helping out our kiddos and closing out those gaps. I mean, it was awesome. I'm very appreciative of that ESSER money. It did a lot of good, but the ESSER money is about to wind up. And what I don't want to see, and this
Yeah,
speaks to your point,
here it comes.
if I've invested in a product and teachers get used to it and they love it, and for 1 year it was one price, and then the next year it has quadrupled in price, and we can't
Yep,
afford it,
the
the
family rate
family
is
rate
gone.
is gone. I
Yeah,
really, if I was
yep.
to have a message for ed tech companies, I would say think about that, because we're not going to have the resources to invest the way that we used to. And I just, because one of the things that concerns me is a world of AI haves and have nots, because we can get it right. And I think all students deserve and must have access and opportunity to AI. And I would just hate for finance and economics to become the barrier that leads to some having and some having not. In terms of my vision, here's what I want. I think the best thing for kids is for them to become great thinkers. They need to be able to think creatively. They need to be able to think with complexity. They need to be able to think critically, and they need to have computational thinking skills. Our kids are going to need to be agile. What I tell people is that, yes, AI is here, but in my other life, the dream world that I think about it, like, I am fascinated with quantum mechanics and quantum physics, and have been for some time. And when I was
Mm,
growing up, the thought of a quantum computer was like, we can never do it. It's just too hard. Well, guess what? Quantum computing is here. Quantum computing makes the computing and computational ability that we have now like this, right? And so if we focus too much on on
Yeah.
artificial intelligence, what it can do, and we have quantum computing right around the corner, and we focus so much on the AI and not the thinking and not creating students who are agile thinkers and adaptable thinkers who can address multiple situations, then they're going to miss out. We've also denied them access and opportunity. So my vision is, how do we create thinkers? If they can think and they can adapt and they can be agile, it doesn't matter what comes their way, whether it's AI or whatever technological advancement that's coming. Because I'm telling you right now, quantum computing is next. Within the next couple of years, that's what we'll
Mm,
be talking about more. In the combination of AI and that power of machine learning and quantum mechanics. I mean, I'm excited, but also like, ooh. So,
yeah.
yeah.
Whew. Well, I mean, I don't understand quantum computing nearly as much as you do, but I will say this. I had the opportunity to read, the book by the Deep Mind AI founder, Mustafa Suleiman, and he just talked about over the last decade, just as an example, how the amount of computing that they use for like some elementary artificial intelligence technologies to like power some of those like games that they were doing, Go, and some of those earlier trials that they were doing for AI compared to what it is. They said it's not 10 times,
Mhm.
it's to the magnitude of 10 more computing power that we're using. And so they're saying like once we have quantum computing, the all of those things get cheaper and more powerful. So you're impressed by generative AI, just being able to even think about what this can do when you have that type of power. Nneka, be honest with me, once we get quantum computing, are you building your Iron Man suit?
You know what? Who knows? You know what? It's kind of like when we talked before, a couple years ago, and it was so funny because I found this, not found it. I was just looking over some stuff, just reviewing just my work and things in space, and I found an interview from 2021 or a podcast that I did, and we were talking about how it was interesting because my thing back then was like, chatbots are getting really sophisticated. Like, who knew like what I was talking about?
Hmm.
No need, but it was so funny. But one of the things we were talking about is that in the absence of like what the future would look like, is like, no, we're going to be drawn to the experience. If AI is doing all these things and our
Hmm.
future and technology is doing all these things, it'll be the experience, the humanity that embraces. And we were talking about going to Hermes and what that would look like with your Hermes scarf. And I said, well, what'll happen is, by the time I get in the door, they'll know what scarf I wanted. It'll be in my bag and at the door waiting for me, right? So it's the same thing with when you think about the power of quantum computing, like it'll be amazing. But at the same time, I think what a great time to embrace our humanity. This is what I think about tech. The technological age, it is the such an optimal time for us to embrace what it means to be human, embrace what humanity means and what it means to connect with each other. It's going to be essential.
Hmm.
One of the books that I definitely want to recommend, that's very accessible, is Quantum Supremacy. I do not want to mess the individual's name who wrote this. It's Michio Kaku, Michio, first name Kaku, last name. Quantum Supremacy. It's a really accessible book. The way he explains quantum computing and the implications for the future. Normally, I'm not big on, particularly when I do podcast, I don't want to single out products or be negative or positive about any products. That's very important to me. I'm actually very neutral, but I highly do recommend Quantum Supremacy for those who want to learn more about quantum computing.
God, I
It
hope it has an
does.
audiobook. I'm going to listen to it
It
on my
actually
next
does.
walk.
Yes.
So, yes. All right. Well, Nneka, thanks so much for just walking us through some of those pieces. I'd love to start to close out here by asking you
Yes.
about day 29. I know you're spending a lot of your time, energy working on that. What is it? I know it's coming up in about a week here. How can folks
So
jump
day
in and engage?
29 was we came together, our steering committee, and based on kind of what we were talking about, we've had a lot of conversations around AI, but how do we have those practical, what do we do now, right? I'm a teacher. I've heard all about AI. Tell me, because one of the biggest questions I have, what do I do with it tomorrow? Right? How do I use this in my classroom? And so that's what day 29 is about. It is about practical uses of AI that individuals can use right away. And so I am excited about it. It's 24 hours of programming and content. So it will be a long day. I'm not going to be for all of it, but it's going to be great. And I thought, look, let's, when we were talking, we were like, let's just go big. Let's be ambitious, get it out there. There's nothing wrong with that. And so I'm excited about it and where it will lead. And I think again, just beginning to shift that conversation onto actionable steps that we can take and practical steps that we can take so that that implementation reality for teachers becomes more evident and more realistic for them.
And I know, just to contextualize this further for folks, I saw on your LinkedIn you were planning on presenting a session you had just presented actually at a conference, AI for little ones, at day 29. So I mean, I personally love a little preview based on what we talked about. What is AI for little ones? What's the session? Maybe give us a couple of sneak peeks before we all tune into your
Yes.
session in a
And
couple weeks here.
so kind of like in my session and it was at the Texas Computer Education Association. So I was like, this is the lowest tech part of the conference you're going to be in because guess what? They're kiddos. And with kiddos, it's just like I said, we need to teach people to think. So, how do we teach people to think? Teach them about AI as well and get them primed and ready for deeper conversations, deeper utility with AI tools as they grow. And so, one of the things that I recommend is having them, work with Play-Doh to build like their own robot and then have conversations about create. But
Oh,
then you think, okay, well, they're just building a robot. Even a kid can talk about what does it mean to create? How did you feel about creating? Can you build something? Can you talk about each step that you took to create? And so, for example, one of the things that I say practical use is next day. You can have a card with Play Doh that says, your card, you have to do a leg. Your card, you have to do an arm. Your card, you have to do a head based on the colors. And the kids have to come together and build their robot together. So you're building in that collaboration piece. You're building that creation piece. What does it mean to work as a team to build something? And this is what's happening with AI, right? You're creating, you're building. So you're building that thinking. You don't necessarily have to use the text because it is limited. As a part of that, I do also talk about tools that do not collect personal data, that they are one offs. You can go online, right? Enter in, one of these products and kids can use it. And since they are entering in personally identifiable information, even so much as their names, it is safer to use. Nothing's safe, but safer to use. And so we talk about those things as well. So I was excited. I was humbled and honored by the reception that I received because, again, people were like, how do we use this? And it was interesting to see that people were like, we're so happy that now we have a pathway to use this with our littlest learners. And so that was exciting.
oh, well, I'm so excited to check out your
Thank
session.
you.
I'll definitely be there, and I'll make sure that I share the registration link on your episode so that folks who are interested in checking out your session or other sessions on the day are able to do so. I got. I don't know if we've talked about this in the last episode or recently, but I got my son, my 7th month old at home, so I'm collecting activities right now for things that I could be doing in the future for him. As I expect him to continue to learn and grow as he gets older and starts to function more. So, I'm excited to just put on my hat there as well as I learned from you. So thank you for this. Just any other, beyond LinkedIn, connected with you on LinkedIn, any other ways you would invite folks to connect with you or any just
Mhm.
messages you want to throw
Yeah,
out there as we
LinkedIn is the
close out
best
here?
way. I am working on my website. The perfectionist side of me will not let me publish it. It's just horrible, but but I'm gonna get over that hump. But that'll be available at some point, which will be NnekaMcGee.com. But right now, LinkedIn is the best way. And again, what I'll say is that it's okay to breathe. It's okay to take a measured approach. It's okay to be careful. I call myself a cautious advocate. I am all in when it comes to AI, but I'm also cautious and that's okay. And I think that we can stand on that and still embrace what's coming for the future and also prepare our kids for it as well.
Nneka McGee, thanks so much for returning. You got the
Yes,
title belt.
bring
You got
it.
the title belt second time here.
I'm ready
So
for the
thanks.
WWE tackling AI.